I am Claire, 32 years old, and until last Friday, I was the top marketing strategist at Elite Vision. For 7 years, I built our relationship with Mindful Tech, turning it into a $200 million account. Then came that calendar invite from HR. Amanda, my boss of 6 months, had been undermining me for weeks. They called it strategic optimization. I never imagined that 3 days later, Mindful Tech would change everything. If you are watching this right now, please hit like and subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Your support means everything as I share how corporate betrayal led to my greatest opportunity. 8 years ago, I graduated with honors from Cornell University with dual degrees in marketing and business administration. I had offers from several prestigious firms in New York and Chicago, but I chose Elite Vision Marketing in Boston because their mission statement spoke to me, building authentic brand stories that matter. The starting salary was $20,000 less than my highest offer, but the potential to create meaningful work outweighed the financial sacrifice. My first account was a small tech startup called Mindful Tech. They had a meditation app with about 50,000 users and a marketing budget that barely covered our minimum retainer. The CEO, Michael Thompson, was passionate but practical. During our first meeting, he looked me in the eye and said, "We have limited resources, Claire. What we need is someone who believes in what we are doing and can grow with us." I took his challenge seriously. Instead of applying cookie-cutter strategies, I immersed myself in their user data. I discovered their most loyal users were not the yoga enthusiasts they had been targeting, but busy professionals seeking mental clarity. We pivoted their messaging, and within 6 months, their user base tripled. Year after year, as Mindful Tech expanded their product offerings beyond meditation into broader wellness technology, I grew their account from a $100,000 retainer to over $200 million annually. Mindful Tech became Elite Vision's most profitable client, accounting for 30% of our total revenue. My team expanded too. Jessica Parker, fresh out of college with a creative writing background, became our content specialist. Her ability to transform technical features into compelling narratives was unmatched. Tyler Rodriguez joined us as the data analyst, bringing scientific rigor to our campaigns. Both looked to me not just as their supervisor, but as a mentor who would champion their growth. The only senior executive who truly recognized my contributions was Lawrence Wilson, our chief strategy officer. In his 60s and approaching retirement, Lawrence had no interest in office politics. During our monthly strategy lunches, he would often say, "Claire, in this industry, client relationships are everything. The numbers matter, but trust is the real currency." Under his guidance, I refined not just my marketing skills, but my business acumen. Just 3 months ago, I secured Mindful Tech's new product line campaign, adding $50 million in additional revenue to our company. The launch of their corporate wellness platform designed for Fortune 500 companies was my most ambitious project yet. The entire company celebrated when Michael signed the contract, doubling their annual commitment to us. But beneath the celebration, tectonic shifts were happening at Elite Vision. Our founder had stepped down, replaced by Douglas Freeman, a CEO known for aggressive growth strategies. Douglas brought in his own leadership team, including Amanda Bryant, who became my direct supervisor. The first warning signs appeared subtly. Amanda began scheduling client calls when I had immovable conflicts. In leadership meetings, she would present my strategies as though they were her own, making only cursory acknowledgments of my team's work. When I raised concerns privately, she assured me it was just her onboarding process to understand the business. Then came the exclusions. I discovered Amanda had created a separate channel for Mindful Tech communications that excluded me. When I confronted her, she claimed it was to respect my time given my other account responsibilities, despite Mindful Tech being my primary focus for years. Lawrence noticed too. During our last lunch, he lowered his voice and said, "Be careful, Claire. I have seen this pattern before. New leadership, new favorites, document everything." I appreciated his concern, but felt secure in my position. After all, Mindful Tech's contract renewal was approaching, and no one knew their needs like I did. I stayed late every night for 2 weeks, preparing a comprehensive renewal strategy. The proposal included expanded services that would increase the retainer by another $25 million. Patricia Lewis, Mindful Tech's chief marketing officer, had already expressed enthusiasm about several of my new ideas during our preliminary discussions. The day before my scheduled presentation to the leadership team, Amanda informed me that she would be delivering it instead. Douglas wants to see how I handle our key accounts, she explained with a smile that never reached her eyes. We will use your slides, of course. Consider it a compliment that your work will be presented to the CEO. I swallowed my objections and reminded myself that the substance mattered more than who received the credit. The renewal was the priority, and I would still lead the actual implementation. That evening, I emailed Amanda the final presentation with detailed speaker notes for each slide. The following morning, I arrived early to find the conference room already full. Amanda sat at Douglas's right hand while several executives I rarely interacted with occupied the remaining seats. My usual chair was taken, so I stood against the wall as Amanda began presenting my work, with only minimal changes to the introduction. Douglas interrupted 10 minutes in. This is impressive, Amanda. The depth of understanding of Mindful Tech's business model shows real strategic thinking. Amanda accepted the compliment without acknowledging my contribution. Later that afternoon, I received a calendar invitation from Bethany Morris in Human Resources for 9 a.m. the next day. The subject line read simply, Personnel Discussion. I messaged Lawrence about it, but received an automatic reply that he was out of office for the remainder of the week. I tried not to worry. Perhaps it was about a promotion or restructuring my team to handle the expanded Mindful Tech business. With renewal negotiations approaching, they would need me more than ever. I stayed until 9 p.m. that night, finalizing campaign details, confident that whatever tomorrow brought, my 7 years of dedication and the $200 million client relationship I had built would speak for themselves. I had no idea that by this time tomorrow my keycard would no longer work and the word optimization would take on an entirely new meaning. The next morning arrived with unusual brightness for early autumn in Boston. I dressed with extra care, choosing a navy blue suit that I reserved for client presentations. If this meeting was about a reorganization, I wanted to project confidence and professionalism. I arrived at the office 15 minutes early, nodding to the security guard as I had done thousands of mornings before. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt longer than usual. The doors opened to reveal our reception area, the wall adorned with awards I had helped the company earn over the years. The Mindful Tech Campaign Excellence Trophy from last year held the center position. Bethany was already waiting at the conference room door. Her expression was carefully neutral, but the folder clutched against her chest, and the way she checked her watch suggested this was not a casual discussion. Good morning, Claire. Please come in, she said, gesturing to the smallest conference room we rarely used. The room had 3 chairs, 2 on one side of the table, where Bethany took a seat next to a man I recognized as Gerald Thompson from legal. The single chair across from them awaited me like a defendant's seat in a courtroom. Is Amanda joining us? I asked, noting her absence despite being my direct supervisor. That will not be necessary for this conversation, Gerald replied, while arranging several documents on the table. Bethany cleared her throat. Claire, as you know, Elite Vision is committed to maintaining our competitive edge in an evolving marketplace. Following recent leadership analysis, we have identified several areas requiring strategic optimization. The corporate jargon immediately set off warning bells. My stomach tightened as she continued. After careful consideration of our organizational structure and resource allocation, we have made the difficult decision to eliminate your position effective immediately. The words hung in the air like smoke, acrid and suffocating. I blinked, certain I had misheard. Eliminate my position. I am the lead strategist on our largest account. Mindful Tech represents $200 million in annual revenue that I personally secured and maintained. Gerald slid a document across the table. This outlines your severance package. 2 weeks of pay for each year of service, continuation of health benefits for 60 days, and an agreement regarding confidentiality and non-solicitation of clients. I glanced down at the paper, then noticed something else. My security badge, which I had placed on the table upon sitting down, had a red sticker affixed to the back that I had never seen before. My badge has already been deactivated, hasn't it? You decided this before I even walked in the room. Bethany had the decency to look uncomfortable. Standard protocol for departing executives, Claire. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. I repeated, my voice rising slightly. I built the Mindful Tech relationship from nothing. Who will manage their account now? We have brought Rachel Morgan on board. She comes highly recommended with extensive experience in the tech wellness space. Bethany replied, not meeting my eyes. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. Rachel Morgan had worked with Amanda at their previous agency. This was never about optimization. It was about Amanda installing her own team. Does Lawrence know about this decision? I asked, thinking of my mentor. All senior leadership was consulted. Gerald replied smoothly, pushing a pen toward me. If you could sign the severance agreement, we can process your final payment promptly. I left the pen untouched. I would like time to review this document with my attorney. Gerald nodded stiffly. Of course. You have 48 hours to sign for the severance package, as offered. After that, the terms may be subject to revision. What followed was a blur of humiliation. I was escorted to my office where a cardboard box already sat waiting. A security guard stood at the door while I packed personal items under Bethany's supervision. Pictures with my team, the award Michael had personally handed me last year, the leather portfolio Lawrence had given me for my 5th work anniversary, all went into the box. My computer had already been locked. 7 years of work accessible only by logging in was now beyond my reach. As we passed through the open office, I noticed colleagues averting their eyes, suddenly engrossed in their screens. Jessica looked up, her expression stricken, but Amanda appeared at her side, immediately placing a hand on her shoulder and steering her away. The final indignity came at the elevator. Douglas stepped out just as we were waiting to descend. He gave me a cursory nod, then turned to Bethany. All set here? He asked, as though inquiring about a furniture delivery. Yes, sir. Just completing the exit process, Bethany replied. Douglas nodded again, then walked away without acknowledging me further. 7 years of dedication dismissed with less consideration than a food order. The security guard accompanied me through the lobby and out to the street. Sorry about this, Miss Sullivan, he muttered, genuine sympathy in his voice as he took my badge. It was the only human moment in the entire process. I stood on the sidewalk, cardboard box in my arms, as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Claire, it is Lawrence. Using my personal phone. Call me when you can. I am sorry. This was not right. That evening, after spending hours in a coffee shop because I could not face going home to an empty apartment, I finally called Lawrence. They did not consult me, he said immediately. I was strategically sent to the Chicago office this week. When I returned this morning and heard, I confronted Douglas. What did he say? I asked, my voice hoarse from holding back tears all day. The usual corporate doublespeak. Realigning resources. Fresh perspective needed. But Claire, his voice dropped. Amanda has been planning this for months. She brought Rachel in for interviews 3 weeks after she started. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing it had been premeditated. What about Mindful Tech? They trust me, Lawrence. We were in the middle of renewal negotiations. He sighed heavily. Amanda told them you had accepted another position and left voluntarily. She is presenting herself as having worked closely with you and knowing all the account details. After we hung up, I finally returned to my apartment. The space that had once felt like a reward for my hard work now seemed like a financial millstone. My mortgage payment was substantially optimized for a salary I no longer had. Student loans from Cornell still lingered despite years of payments. The severance package would cover expenses for maybe 3 months if I was extremely frugal. I opened my laptop and updated my LinkedIn profile, removing current from my Elite Vision position. Within minutes, a former colleague messaged me. Is it true you left Elite Vision? News traveled fast, but apparently not the accurate version. I closed the laptop without responding and sat in the growing darkness of my living room. For 7 years, I had defined myself by my career, my client relationships, my professional growth. In a single morning, that identity had been stripped away. I picked up a framed photo taken at last year's Mindful Tech product launch. Michael and Patricia stood beside me, all of us smiling at the success we had created together. They had no idea I was gone, believing, instead, that I had abandoned them without a word. The weight of the day finally broke through my professional composure. Alone in my apartment, I allowed myself to feel the full force of the betrayal, the fear, and the uncertainty of what would come next. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of forced productivity and creeping anxiety. Each morning I would dress as though going to work, set up at my dining table, and methodically apply for positions comparable to what I had lost. Each evening I would check my bank account, calculating how long my savings would last if no offers materialized. The job market was in the midst of a significant downturn. Tech companies were announcing layoffs daily, flooding the market with experienced professionals like myself. Recruiters who had once eagerly pursued me now responded with automated messages. "We will keep your resume on file for future opportunities." Interviews, when they came, inevitably included uncomfortable questions. "I see you left Elite Vision recently. Why the change after 7 successful years?" asked the chief marketing officer at a mid-sized agency. I had prepared for this, crafting an answer that was truthful without being bitter. The company underwent a leadership transition that shifted strategic priorities. It seemed like the right time to seek a new challenge where my client relationship skills could add maximum value. What I did not say was how I checked my email compulsively for any word from Mindful Tech. The silence from Michael and Patricia hurt more than the rejection letters accumulating in my inbox. By the 4th week, financial realities began pressing harder. The mortgage payment notification appeared on my phone with an ominous red dot. My health insurance would expire in 30 days. I began cutting expenses ruthlessly, canceling subscriptions, cooking at home rather than ordering takeout, even considering whether I could defer my student loan payments. The isolation grew more difficult than the financial strain. Friends from Elite Vision stopped responding to my messages. Industry contacts became suddenly busy whenever I suggested coffee. It was as though my layoff carried a contagion no one wanted to catch. A former colleague finally agreed to meet furtively, suggesting a cafe far from the office district. "Everyone's scared, Claire," she admitted, glancing around as though Amanda might appear behind the pastry counter. Douglas made it clear that anyone maintaining contact with departed personnel would be demonstrating questionable loyalty. "That's practically illegal," I protested. She shrugged helplessly. "Maybe, but no one wants to test it. The economy's terrible and jobs are scarce." That afternoon, I landed an interview with Horizon Marketing, a respected agency with clients in the wellness sector. The conversation flowed naturally, my expertise evident as I discussed strategies I had implemented. The creative director nodded approvingly as I presented case studies of my work with Mindful Tech, carefully framed as my previous client. "This is exactly the perspective we need," she said warmly. "Our team will discuss next steps and be in touch by Friday." Hope flickered for the first time in weeks. I splurged on a proper coffee on the way home, allowing myself to imagine a new beginning. Friday arrived with a brief email. "Thank you for your interest in Horizon Marketing. After careful consideration, we have decided to move forward with another candidate who better fits our current needs." I later discovered through a LinkedIn update that they had hired someone internally, promoting a junior manager with half my experience but presumably half my salary requirements as well. That same day, scrolling through industry news to stay current for interviews, I saw a press release that stopped me cold. Elite Vision announces enhanced partnership with Mindful Tech. The accompanying photo showed Amanda and Rachel smiling alongside Michael and Patricia. The article quoted Rachel describing the innovative strategy she had developed for Mindful Tech's corporate wellness platform. It was my strategy, virtually word for word. I closed the browser, fighting a wave of nausea. Not only had they taken my job, but they were now taking credit for my work while erasing my contributions entirely. 6 weeks after my layoff, with no solid prospects despite 23 applications and 8 interviews, I received a notice that my health insurance coverage would end in 4 days. That same morning, an email arrived from my mortgage lender regarding my missed payment and the importance of addressing it promptly to avoid impact on my credit score. I sat at my dining table, surrounded by bills and rejection letters, and considered options I had previously thought unthinkable. Perhaps I could find a retail position to generate some income while continuing my job search. My cousin in Chicago had a spare room where I could stay if I sold my apartment, though the current real estate market would likely mean taking a loss. As I researched bankruptcy protection just to understand my options, my phone lit up with a LinkedIn message notification. I almost ignored it, expecting another automated recruitment response, but the sender's name caught my attention: Patricia Lewis, Chief Marketing Officer at Mindful Tech. My heart raced as I opened the message. Claire, I've recently learned about your departure from Elite Vision. There seems to be conflicting information about the circumstances. Would you be available for a confidential conversation? Please contact me directly at my personal email. I stared at the screen, suspicion immediately rising. Was this a trap? Had Amanda somehow convinced Patricia to reach out fishing for evidence that I was violating the non-solicitation agreement? After careful consideration, I composed a neutral response, confirming I was no longer with Elite Vision and would be happy to connect. I provided my personal email rather than my phone number, wanting any communication documented. Patricia's response came within the hour from her personal Gmail account rather than her Mindful Tech address. Claire, I'll be direct. The quality of service from Elite Vision has declined dramatically since your departure. Our last 3 meetings have been disastrous, with Rachel Morgan presenting recycled ideas and Amanda unable to answer basic questions about our business model. Michael is furious, especially after learning you didn't leave voluntarily as we were told. We need to meet in person. Are you available tomorrow? This is strictly confidential. The email concluded with an address I didn't recognize and instructions to tell no one about the meeting. I spent the night alternating between hope and anxiety. What if this was an elaborate setup engineered by Amanda to prove I was interfering with their client relationship? Yet the details Patricia mentioned about the meetings rang true. Rachel wouldn't understand Mindful Tech's business model the way I did after 7 years of partnership. The pragmatic part of me acknowledged that even if this was legitimate, helping Mindful Tech might not lead to anything beneficial for my situation. Still, these people had been more than clients. I had considered them partners and friends. I stayed up until 3 a.m. researching Mindful Tech's recent product announcements and market position, analyzing their competitors' moves, and refreshing my understanding of their 5-year strategic plan that I had helped develop. If this meeting was real, I would be fully prepared. The next morning, I dressed in my best interview suit, spent extra time on my appearance to hide the effects of stress and sleepless nights, and took a rideshare to the address Patricia had provided. It was a private meeting room in an upscale hotel, not Mindful Tech's offices. As the elevator carried me to the 15th floor, I rehearsed what I would say, careful to remain professional regardless of what awaited me. I had no idea I was about to walk into a confrontation that would change everything. The hotel corridor was quiet as I approached the meeting room. Before I could knock, the door opened to reveal Patricia Lewis herself. Her usual confident smile was replaced with a look of cautious relief. "Claire, thank you for coming," she said, stepping aside to let me enter. "We have about 15 minutes before the others arrive." The room was set up for a formal meeting with water pitchers, notepads, and a large screen on one wall. I noticed Patricia had chosen a seat facing the door, leaving the chair next to her, clearly intended for me. Others I asked, setting my portfolio on the table. "Your message didn't mention who else would be attending." Patricia poured water into 2 glasses. "Michael will be here along with our General Counsel, Sarah Washington. But first I wanted a moment with you privately." She looked directly at me. "What really happened, Claire? We were told you accepted a position with a competitor and left without proper transition." The blatant lie stung anew. I took a careful breath before responding. "I was laid off as part of what they called a strategic optimization. I had no warning, no transition period. One day I was preparing for our contract renewal, the next I was escorted from the building with my personal belongings in a box." Patricia's expression hardened. "That explains a lot. The renewal presentation was a disaster. Rachel clearly didn't understand our user demographics or why our previous campaigns had succeeded. When we asked specific questions, Amanda kept deflecting. Hope flickered again, but I tamped it down. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm not sure how I can help. My severance agreement includes a non-solicitation clause." "We approached you, not the other way around," Patricia said firmly. "And there's something else you should know. After 3 failed meetings, Michael requested access to all the strategy documents you had developed over the years. Amanda claimed those belonged to Elite Vision and refused to share them. That's when we started digging deeper." Before she could continue, her phone buzzed. She checked it quickly. "They're on their way up. Claire, whatever happens next, please know that we valued our working relationship with you more than you realized." The cryptic statement had no time to settle before the door opened again. Michael Thompson entered first, his tall frame and silver hair as commanding as ever. He was followed by a woman I assumed was Sarah, carrying a leather portfolio and an iPad. Michael's face broke into a genuine smile when he saw me. "Claire, it's good to see you." He extended his hand, and his firm handshake conveyed sincerity that had been sorely missing from my professional interactions lately. Sarah introduced herself with the efficient warmth of an experienced corporate attorney, setting her materials on the table methodically. We have a few minutes before Patricia began, but was interrupted by another knock at the door. Michael's expression shifted to something cooler, more professional. That would be the Elite Vision representatives. My stomach dropped. "You invited Elite Vision. I don't think I should be here for that meeting." "On the contrary," Sarah spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "You are exactly who needs to be here." Before I could respond, Patricia opened the door. Douglas Freeman entered first, his expensive suit and confident stride projecting the authority he had wielded so decisively against me. Amanda followed, her surprise at seeing me quickly masked by a professional smile. Rachel Morgan came last, clutching a presentation folder and looking decidedly uncomfortable. "What is this?" Amanda asked, her voice sharp as her eyes locked on me. "We agreed this would be a private discussion about campaign adjustments." Michael gestured to the chairs across from where Patricia and I were seated. "Please have a seat. There's been a change to our agenda." Douglas remained standing. "If this is some kind of ambush, we're not interested. Claire is no longer with Elite Vision, and her presence at a client meeting represents a clear violation of her severance agreement." Mr. Freeman, Sarah interjected smoothly. "Mindful Tech invited Miss Sullivan as our guest to address some serious concerns about the handling of our account. Unless you're suggesting you have the authority to determine who we can and cannot invite to our own meetings, I suggest you take a seat so we can proceed efficiently." The subtle power play worked. Douglas sat, though his posture remained rigid. Amanda positioned herself beside him, while Rachel took the chair farthest from me. "Let's be direct," Michael began. "The quality of service Mindful Tech has received since Claire's departure has been unacceptable. The last 3 presentations contained recycled strategies without any adaptation to our evolving market position. Your team has missed 2 critical deadlines, and the preliminary campaign metrics show a 30% decrease in engagement." Amanda leaned forward. "Market conditions have changed significantly, Michael. The wellness tech sector is facing unprecedented challenges that impact engagement across all platforms." "Interesting," Patricia replied, sliding several papers across the table. "Because our competitors are showing increased engagement during this same period. These reports indicate the issue isn't the market, it's the strategy." Douglas intercepted the papers. "We're in a transition period, adapting to internal changes. Rachel is still getting up to speed on your account specifics." After 3 months, Michael questioned. "Claire managed our entire product launch in less time with better results." Amanda's smile tightened. "With all due respect, Claire is no longer relevant to this discussion. Her departure from Elite Vision was a necessary part of our organizational evolution." "Her departure," Patricia repeated carefully, "which you represented to us as voluntary, when in fact she was terminated without cause or notice." "The specific personnel decisions of our agency aren't subject to client approval," Douglas stated flatly. "We make changes as needed to optimize our service delivery." "Optimize," I echoed, speaking for the first time since they entered. "That's the word you used when you eliminated my position. Strategic optimization." Rachel shifted uncomfortably in her chair, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Douglas shot her a warning glance. "The truth," Amanda said, her voice taking on a rehearsed quality, "is that Claire's performance had been declining for months. Client satisfaction surveys indicated a need for fresh perspective on the Mindful Tech account." I couldn't contain my response. Client satisfaction surveys, Michael and Patricia, were my only clients at Mindful Tech, and this is the first I'm hearing of any dissatisfaction. Michael's expression darkened. "We never completed any satisfaction surveys indicating problems with Claire's work. In fact, I personally wrote to your CEO, commending her leadership on our last product launch." The room fell silent as the lie was exposed. Amanda glanced at Douglas, clearly seeking backup. Douglas cleared his throat. Perhaps there was a miscommunication about the survey results. The broader point remains that agencies regularly reassess team structures to provide optimal client service. Let's be very clear, Sarah said, opening her portfolio. We're not here to debate Elite Vision's right to make personnel changes. We're here because the quality of service promised in our contract has not been delivered since those changes were made. Amanda attempted to regain control. If there are specific concerns about recent deliverables, Rachel has prepared a revised strategy that addresses all the points raised in our last meeting. Rachel began distributing folders, her hands visibly shaking. As I received my copy and opened it, I immediately recognized elements of the strategy I had developed months ago, now repackaged with different terminology, but fundamentally unchanged. This looks familiar, I said quietly. Amanda's eyes flashed with anger. Are you implying something inappropriate, Claire? Because that could constitute defamation. Michael raised a hand, silencing further debate. Before we continue, I believe we should all review a document that puts this situation in proper context. He nodded to Sarah, who activated the iPad and slid it to the center of the table. What am I looking at? Douglas asked, leaning forward to see the screen. These are the performance metrics for Mindful Tech campaigns over the past 2 years, Sarah explained. The highlighted section represents the 3 months since Claire's departure. The data was unmistakable. A consistent upward trend in engagement, conversion, and brand perception metrics under my leadership, followed by a dramatic decline coinciding exactly with Rachel's takeover of the account. Amanda attempted damage control. Correlation doesn't imply causation. Multiple factors influence campaign performance. Including the factor sitting right across from you, Patricia said pointedly. The strategist who built our relationship from the ground up and understood our business intimately. Michael touched the screen, changing to a new document. This is our contract with Elite Vision, specifically the section guaranteeing that key personnel assigned to our account would remain consistent throughout the contract term with any changes requiring client approval. Douglas's expression hardened. Standard language that allows for necessary staffing adjustments, which require our written approval, Sarah corrected. Approval that was never requested for Claire's removal or Rachel's appointment. The tension in the room thickened as the legal implications became clear. Amanda's confident facade began to crack. We have always valued the Mindful Tech relationship. Douglas offered, his tone conciliatory. If there are concerns about current staffing, we can certainly discuss alternatives, perhaps bringing in a more experienced strategist from our Chicago office. Michael changed the screen again, this time revealing a document I had never seen before. What is this? I asked, leaning forward to get a better view. Sarah smiled for the first time since the meeting began. This, Claire, is why we really asked you here today. The document on the iPad was a formal job offer letter on Mindful Tech letterhead. The position title read Director of Strategic Marketing with my name at the top. The compensation figure made me blink twice to ensure I wasn't misreading it. Douglas reacted first. This is completely inappropriate. Claire signed a non-compete agreement as part of her employment with Elite Vision. Sarah calmly reached for another document in her portfolio. We've reviewed Miss Sullivan's severance agreement thoroughly. The non-compete clause is unenforceable in Massachusetts without proper consideration, especially in cases of involuntary termination. The non-solicitation clause prevents her from approaching your clients, but it does not prevent clients from approaching her, which is precisely what has occurred here. Amanda's face flushed with anger. This is a setup. You orchestrated her firing just so you could hire her directly and eliminate our agency fees. Michael's eyebrows shot up. Are you seriously suggesting we manipulated your company into firing your most effective strategist, hoping she would become available to us? That would require levels of corporate espionage beyond even the most aggressive business practices. Not to mention, Patricia added, we had no idea Claire had been terminated until your team began missing deadlines and delivering subpar work. You told us she left voluntarily for another opportunity. Rachel, who had remained silent throughout most of the exchange, finally spoke. The transition materials I received were incomplete. Critical strategy documents were missing, and client history was fragmented at best. Amanda turned on her sharply. That's enough, Rachel. Is it? Rachel countered, surprising everyone with her sudden backbone. I was brought in with assurances that this account was well documented and would be easy to manage. Instead, I've been set up to fail while you take credit for any work that succeeds. Douglas intervened clearly, trying to regain control of his fracturing team. This meeting has gone far beyond its intended purpose. We should reconvene when emotions aren't running so high. I don't think that will be necessary, Michael said, sliding the iPad directly in front of me. Claire Mindful Tech would like to bring you on as our Director of Strategic Marketing, overseeing all our campaign development in-house. The position reports directly to Patricia, with a seat on our Executive Leadership Committee. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. The offer represented everything I had worked toward in my career: recognition, authority, compensation that reflected my true value. Yet I was acutely aware of the three Elite Vision executives, watching my response with varying degrees of shock and anger. This is a substantial offer, I said carefully, and one that would need proper consideration. Of course, Patricia nodded. We don't expect an immediate answer, though we would need to know within the week to properly plan the transition. Transition, Douglas scoffed. You can't honestly believe you can simply extract a former employee and move our largest account in-house without consequences. Sarah's expression remained professionally neutral. Mr. Freeman, the consequences have already manifested in the declining quality of service your agency has provided. As for the account, perhaps you should review Section 12, Paragraph 3 of our Master Services Agreement. Douglas pulled out his phone, presumably to access the contract, while Amanda continued her objections. This is client poaching, plain and simple. We built the Mindful Tech brand from nothing. No, I countered, finding my voice. I built the relationship from nothing. I developed the strategies that grew their user base from 50,000 to 20 million. I created the campaigns that established them as leaders in the wellness technology space. With Elite Vision resources, Amanda shot back, using our proprietary methodologies and tools that you're now apparently prepared to walk out the door with. Michael leaned forward, his patience visibly waning. Miss Bryant, the methodologies that built our success were developed specifically for Mindful Tech by Claire. We have documentation of every strategy session, every unique approach tailored to our business needs. Nothing about our success came from an agency template. Douglas had gone pale while reviewing whatever he found on his phone. There appears to be a termination clause that allows Mindful Tech to end our agreement with 30 days' notice if key personnel are removed without approval. Correct, Sarah confirmed. Notice that we're preparing to deliver today following this meeting. The implications crashed over the Elite Vision team like a wave. $200 million in annual billing, 30% of their total revenue, disappearing with a 30-day countdown. Amanda, desperate now, turned her attack directly on me. You planned this from the beginning. All those private meetings with Patricia, the special relationship with Michael, you were laying the groundwork to steal our client. The accusation was so absurd it almost made me laugh. I was laid off 6 weeks ago without warning, struggling to pay my mortgage and health insurance. If this was my master plan, don't you think I would have lined up the job before losing my income? Enough. Michael's authoritative voice cut through the tension. Elite Vision's internal decisions about personnel are your business. Our decisions about agency partnerships are ours. We've tolerated declining service quality while investigating the situation, but our patience has ended. He nodded to Sarah, who removed an envelope from her portfolio and placed it before Douglas. This is our formal notice of termination of services effective 30 days from today. We will of course honor all outstanding invoices for work completed to date. Douglas stared at the envelope as though it might explode. $200 million vanishing because of a personnel decision that had likely saved them less than $200,000 in salary difference between me and Rachel. Rachel gathered her materials quietly, a mixture of relief and anxiety on her face, as she realized her brief tenure on the Mindful Tech account was ending. But so was her uncomfortable position between warring parties. Amanda wasn't ready to surrender. You can't just replace an entire agency with one person, no matter how experienced. There's an entire team behind our deliverables. Patricia smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. We're aware of the scope of work, which is why the marketing director position is just the beginning. Claire will have budget authority to build her team as needed. The implication was clear. Not only was Mindful Tech taking their business away from Elite Vision, but they might also recruit additional talent from the agency. Amanda's face drained of color at the realization. Douglas, ever the CEO, attempted one final negotiation. Michael, surely we can discuss this. 7 years of partnership shouldn't end over one personnel decision, however poorly executed. We can make adjustments, bring Claire back as a consultant specifically for your account. It was the first acknowledgement that my removal had been a mistake, but it came far too late and for entirely self-serving reasons. Michael stood, signaling the meeting was ending. The decision has been made, Douglas. Elite Vision violated our trust both in removing Claire without approval and in misrepresenting the circumstances of her departure. In business, as in life, trust once broken is difficult to restore. As everyone began gathering their materials, Michael turned to me. Claire, we'll expect your response by Friday. Patricia will be available tomorrow to discuss any questions about the offer. The Elite Vision team filed out, first Douglas and Amanda walking stiffly without further comment. Rachel paused briefly at the door, meeting my eyes with an unspoken acknowledgement before following her superiors. When the door closed behind them, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The past hour felt surreal, a complete reversal of fortune I could never have anticipated when I woke up that morning. Patricia placed a hand on my shoulder. I know this is a lot to process. Take the time you need. Michael nodded in agreement. The position will require significant commitment, but I believe you're more than ready for the challenge. As I gathered my belongings, still processing the extraordinary turn of events, Sarah handed me a business card for any legal questions about the transition. And Claire, she added with the first hint of informal warmth. It's not every day we get to witness karma working so efficiently in the corporate world. I left the hotel in a daze, the iPad tucked securely in my bag with the formal offer letter. 6 weeks ago, I had been escorted from Elite Vision with my career in shambles. Today, I held in my hands an opportunity that exceeded anything I could have imagined. The strategic optimization that had been meant to end my career had instead optimized my future in ways Amanda and Douglas never intended. The morning I accepted Mindful Tech's offer dawned clear and bright, a fitting metaphor for the new chapter beginning in my professional life. After careful consideration and a thorough review by an employment attorney, I signed the contract Patricia had prepared, officially becoming Mindful Tech's first director of strategic marketing. My first day at their headquarters was surreal. The security guard greeted me by name, handing me not a visitor badge, but a permanent access card with my photo already printed on it. Patricia personally gave me a tour of the offices, introducing me to team members, many of whom I had worked with remotely but never met in person. We've prepared your office, she said, leading me down a corridor where executive team members were housed. Michael insisted it have a view of the harbor. The office was larger than any I'd had at Elite Vision, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Boston Harbor. A welcome basket sat on the desk alongside the latest Mindful Tech devices, all configured with my credentials. This is incredible, I said, taking in the space that represented so much more than square footage. It represented validation, recognition of my true value, after weeks of questioning my worth. Patricia smiled. This is just the beginning. Michael has scheduled an all-hands meeting at 10 to introduce you formally to the entire company. He wants everyone to understand your role and authority from day one. As we prepared for the meeting, my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Lawrence had posted a public congratulation on my new position, tagging both me and Mindful Tech. His small act of public support meant everything, especially knowing the potential repercussions he might face from Douglas. The all-hands meeting exceeded my expectations. Michael introduced me not as a new hire, but as the strategic mind behind Mindful Tech's most successful campaigns, now officially part of our executive team. The applause was genuine, many employees familiar with my work over the years despite my previous agency role. In the following days, I immersed myself in understanding the internal operations of Mindful Tech from the client side. Patricia granted me full access to performance data budgets and strategic plans across all departments. Information that had been carefully filtered through agency processes now flowed directly to me, revealing opportunities for integration I had never been able to see before. The most satisfying moment came 2 weeks after I started. Patricia forwarded an email from Amanda, a desperate final attempt to salvage some portion of the Elite Vision relationship with Mindful Tech. We've developed an innovative approach to your corporate wellness platform that leverages emerging demographic trends. The email began, followed by a pitch that recycled elements of strategies I had created months earlier. Should I respond? Patricia asked during our morning meeting. I considered the question carefully. Forward it to Sarah in legal with a reminder about our termination notice. Keep it professional. No commentary necessary. Patricia nodded approvingly. You're handling this more graciously than I might in your position. Success is the best response, I replied, pulling up the preliminary results of our first campaign developed entirely in-house. The engagement metrics showed a 40% improvement over the final Elite Vision campaign, with implementation costs reduced by 30%. The vindication continued as I began building my team. My first call was to Jessica, who had been sidelined at Elite Vision since my departure. I'm not supposed to be talking to you, she whispered when she answered my call clearly at home rather than in the office. I'm calling in my official capacity as Director of Strategic Marketing at Mindful Tech, I replied, enjoying the pause that followed. We're building an in-house content team and need a content director. Someone who understands the brand voice, who can translate complex features into compelling narratives. Her excitement was palpable. Are you serious? Amanda has me writing social media captions for insurance clients now? Very serious. The position reports directly to me with a 30% increase over your current salary and equity options. Jessica joined Mindful Tech the following week. Tyler followed shortly after, bringing his data analytics expertise to our growing team. The most unexpected development came a month later when I received a message from Lawrence. He had announced his retirement from Elite Vision effective immediately. Life's too short to spend my final professional years watching value destroyed by ego and politics, he wrote. Any chance Mindful Tech could use a strategic advisor part-time? With Michael's enthusiastic approval, Lawrence joined us as a senior consultant, his decades of experience providing invaluable perspective as we developed our long-term marketing strategy. 6 weeks into my new role, Patricia entered my office with an industry publication. You might find page 12 interesting, she said, sliding the magazine across my desk. The headline read, Elite Vision announces restructuring following major client loss. The article detailed how the agency had laid off 15% of its staff after strategic portfolio adjustments. Reading between the lines, it was clear that losing the Mindful Tech account had created exactly the kind of financial pressure that had cost me my position months earlier. A smaller article on the following page noted that Amanda Bryant had stepped down to pursue other opportunities effective immediately. Industry sources suggested her departure was directly related to the loss of the agency's largest account. I closed the magazine feeling a complex mixture of emotions. There was satisfaction, certainly, in seeing the consequences of their actions return full circle. But there was also recognition of the human cost, innocent employees caught in the fallout of leadership's poor decisions. Douglas called Michael this morning, Patricia said, settling into the chair across from my desk. He wanted to discuss the possibility of Elite Vision supporting some of our smaller initiatives. What did Michael say? That all marketing decisions now go through you. She smiled. I believe Douglas's exact response involved creative use of profanity. That afternoon, I presented our quarterly marketing plan to Mindful Tech's board of directors. Standing at the head of the conference table where I had once sat as an invited guest, I outlined a vision that integrated brand development, product marketing, and customer engagement in ways that would have been impossible to execute through an external agency. Michael nodded approvingly throughout the presentation. When I concluded, he addressed the board directly. This is exactly why bringing our marketing leadership in-house was the right decision. Claire understands our business at a fundamental level no agency ever could. The board's unanimous approval of both the plan and the expanded budget request represented the final validation of my role. As we left the boardroom, Michael pulled me aside. I received a call from the Marketing Society this morning. They're doing a feature on in-house marketing leadership. I suggested they interview you about your transition from agency to client side. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 months ago, I had been struggling to make mortgage payments and maintain health insurance. Now I was being asked to share industry insights about executive leadership. That evening, I received an unexpected email from Rachel Morgan. Congratulations on your success at Mindful Tech. For what it's worth, you deserved better from Elite Vision. The agency is imploding without the revenue your client relationship generated. Douglas is desperately trying to rebrand the company, but morale is at an all-time low. I considered whether to respond, ultimately deciding that professional courtesy warranted acknowledgement. Thank you, Rachel. I hope things improve for the team there. This industry is small and our paths will likely cross again. 6 months to the day after being called into that small conference room at Elite Vision, I hosted a strategy session in Mindful Tech's main conference room. My team of 15 marketing professionals, including Jessica, Tyler, and Lawrence, as our advisor, presented preliminary concepts for the company's largest product launch to date. As I watched Jessica confidently leading the creative presentation, seeing the pride in Tyler's explanation of his predictive analytics model, I realized that the strategic optimization that had felt like an ending had actually been the beginning of something far more valuable than just a higher-paying position. It had been the catalyst for building something authentic, a team based on genuine respect and recognition rather than politics and false credit. The betrayal that had nearly broken me had ultimately freed me to create the professional environment I had always wanted but never fully experienced. The iPad that had slid across the table that day, changing the trajectory of my career, now sat on my desk as a reminder that sometimes the worst moments in our professional lives can lead to the most meaningful transformations if we have the courage to see them through. 1 year after accepting the position at Mindful Tech, I stood at the podium of the Boston Business Leadership Awards, accepting the Marketing Executive of the Year recognition. The audience included faces from across the industry, including several former Elite Vision colleagues who had reached out to reconnect once the dust had settled. This award represents more than just professional achievement, I said, looking out at the gathered attendees. It represents the power of authentic relationships in business. 1 year ago, I experienced firsthand how quickly corporate loyalty can evaporate. What saved my career wasn't just skill or experience, but the genuine connections I had built over years of putting relationships before transactions. From my vantage point on stage, I could see Patricia and Michael at the Mindful Tech table alongside Lawrence, Jessica, Tyler, and the team we had built together. In the back of the room, I spotted a familiar face I hadn't expected to see. Douglas Freeman, significantly more subdued than the imposing figure who had once dismissed me without a second thought. After the ceremony, he approached hesitantly during the reception. Congratulations, Claire. Well deserved. Thank you, Douglas. How are things at Elite Vision? I asked, genuine curiosity, rather than malice motivating the question. He sighed, the past year evident in the new lines around his eyes. We've downsized considerably, refocused on smaller clients, less complex campaigns. Amanda left the industry entirely. Last I heard, she moved to Colorado to open a yoga studio. And Rachel landed at Davidson and Partners. She's doing well from what I understand. He hesitated before continuing. I owe you an apology, Claire. The decision to remove you was the most expensive mistake of my career. Not just financially, but in terms of agency culture and reputation. The acknowledgement surprised me. I appreciate that, Douglas. Business decisions have human consequences, something I'm very mindful of in my current role. He nodded, understanding the subtle reference to how differently I approached leadership. The industry notices. 3 of your former clients have approached us, asking if we have anyone like Claire on staff. A rueful smile crossed his face. I tell them there isn't anyone else like you, and that's why Mindful Tech was smart enough to hire you directly. As Douglas walked away, Lawrence joined me, champagne flute in hand. Well, that looked civilized. Time heals all wounds. I smiled, not healing so much as perspective. His mistakes created my opportunity, even if that wasn't his intention. Lawrence nodded approvingly. That's the lesson I hoped you'd take from all this. In 30 years of corporate life, I've seen how often seeming disasters create pathways to something better if you're brave enough to walk through the door. The wisdom of his observation had become increasingly clear as I settled into my role at Mindful Tech. The past year had transformed not just my professional circumstances, but my understanding of what truly mattered in building a career. My team had expanded to 22 members, including 5 former Elite Vision employees who had reached out after hearing about our culture of recognition and support. Each hire was carefully considered not just for skill, but for their approach to collaboration and their alignment with the values we had established. Jessica had blossomed into an exceptional creative director, recently featured in Marketing Weekly for her innovative approach to wellness technology messaging. Tyler had built a data analytics team that provided insights so valuable the product development department couldn't make decisions without consulting them first. Most satisfying was the mentorship program I had established, ensuring that junior team members received the guidance and recognition I had valued from Lawrence. The program had become so successful that other departments had adopted our model, creating a company-wide culture of developing talent rather than exploiting it. The financial recovery had been equally transformative. My salary and equity package at Mindful Tech had not only resolved the immediate financial crisis my layoff had created, but provided long-term security I had never experienced. The mortgage that had once kept me awake at night was now paid ahead of schedule, and my student loans had been cleared entirely. More meaningful than the material recovery was the restoration of professional confidence. The self-doubt that had plagued me during those dark weeks of rejection and financial strain had been replaced by a grounded assurance in my abilities and worth. I no longer feared unexpected meeting invitations or questioned my value to the organization. This newfound security allowed me to lead with authenticity rather than anxiety. When team members made mistakes, I could focus on learning opportunities rather than fear of how errors might reflect on me. When difficult decisions needed to be made, I could approach them with transparency rather than politics. 6 months into my tenure, Michael had expanded my role to include oversight of all external communications, essentially combining traditional marketing with public relations and brand development. The integrated approach had yielded unprecedented results, with Mindful Tech's brand recognition increasing 60% among target demographics. "Your story has become something of a legend in marketing circles," Patricia remarked one evening as we reviewed quarterly results. The strategist who was optimized out of her agency only to optimize her client's entire marketing approach. I laughed at the irony. Not the career path I would have chosen voluntarily, but certainly effective. "Would you go back and change it if you could?" she asked, "knowing what you know now?" The question gave me pause. The weeks after my layoff had been among the most difficult of my life. The financial stress, the rejection, the isolation had tested me in ways I would never have chosen. Yet without that crucible, I wouldn't be sitting in this office leading this team doing the most fulfilling work of my career. "No," I said finally. As painful as it was, that experience forced me to confront assumptions I had made about corporate loyalty, about my own value, about what success really means. The lesson was brutal, but necessary. The most profound change wasn't visible on organizational charts or marketing metrics. It was in my fundamental approach to professional identity. Before the layoff, I had unconsciously defined myself by my position, my company affiliation, my client roster. The abrupt removal of those external markers had forced me to recognize that my value existed independently of titles or organizational validation. This realization had freed me from the constant anxiety of performance validation that drives so many professionals to sacrifice health, relationships, and authenticity in pursuit of corporate approval. I could now distinguish between working for recognition and working from a place of genuine value creation. The transformation was evident in how I structured my life outside of work as well. Where I had once regularly worked weekends and evenings to prove my dedication, I now maintained clear boundaries, preserving time for personal renewal that actually made me more effective during work hours. I had established a monthly mentoring lunch for women in marketing, sharing lessons from my experience in creating the supportive network I had lacked during my own crisis. Several participants had successfully navigated similar corporate challenges, using strategies we had discussed, extending the impact of my experience beyond my immediate circle. At our annual planning retreat, Michael announced that Mindful Tech would be expanding internationally with new offices planned for London and Singapore. He asked me to develop the global marketing strategy, a challenge that would once have intimidated me, but now excited me as an opportunity to extend our authentic approach to brand building. "I'd like you to consider relocating to London for the first 6 months of the expansion," he said. "We need your perspective on the ground as we establish the brand in the European market." The old Claire might have immediately said yes, afraid to miss an opportunity for advancement or to appear anything less than completely committed. The new Claire considered the request thoughtfully. "I'd be happy to oversee the launch and make regular trips to London, but I believe my effectiveness comes partly from the team and culture we've built here. I'd suggest identifying a local leadership candidate. I can mentor someone who understands the market nuances that would take me months to learn. Michael nodded approvingly. That's exactly the strategic thinking that makes you valuable to us. Develop a proposal for how you would structure the international marketing leadership. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. The layoff that had seemed like professional catastrophe had ultimately been the catalyst for the most authentic and fulfilling chapter of my career. The iPad that had slid across the table that day, changing everything, now sat in a special place in my office. Not as a trophy commemorating victory over those who had wronged me, but as a reminder that sometimes our greatest opportunities come disguised as our worst setbacks. The strategic optimization that had been intended to discard me had instead optimized my entire professional life in ways I could never have engineered myself. The lesson wasn't just about career resilience or professional vindication. It was about recognizing that true success comes from building genuine relationships, maintaining integrity, even when it's difficult, and defining your value from within, rather than seeking validation from titles or organizations. As I park my car and walk toward my front door, I can't help but smile at life's unexpected turns. Sometimes the worst day of your professional life can be the first day of a journey toward something infinitely better than what you lost. The key is having the courage to keep moving forward, to trust your own value, and to remain open to opportunities that appear in the most unexpected places, even on an iPad sliding across a conference table. Have you ever experienced a professional setback that ultimately led to something better? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey from corporate casualty to executive leadership, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this reminder that sometimes our worst moments can lead to our greatest opportunities. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, your value isn't defined by any title, company, or position. It's the authentic expertise and integrity you bring to everything you do.